Well, welcome to the Business Spotlight series. My name is Heather Frierson, and I'm your host of the Business Spotlight podcast. And today I have Garrett Salpeter, founder and CEO of NeuFit. And I'm so glad he's here today because we're going to dive into his business, his challenges, best practices, and really share a little bit of what it's like to really operate and own a business. So if this is your first time to the channel, be sure to like and subscribe so that you get a notification every time a new show drops, just like this one. Well, Garrett, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks, Heather. It's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, I'm excited about this conversation and to learn more about NeuFit. So why don't you just take a moment to share with our listeners a little bit about your background and who you are and about your business.
Yeah, happy to do it. So for everybody listening, I'll start off by saying how fortunate and blessed I feel to have found a way to do professionally something that sort of overlaps and all of my interests and sort of where things intersect. My background is engineering and neuroscience. I also had been an athlete, played college ice hockey. And so, I just feel very fortunate to have sort of found the first steps on this path, in college, literally in my early 20s, and been on this path now for a long time. But I got into this, I had been a physics major and a pre-engineering student in college, also was playing hockey, and I had an injury where I had previously been frustrated, disappointed with traditional physical therapy, traditional orthopedic medicine. And I had an experience where I met a guy who is a chiropractor, was doing functional neurology, so looking at not just the injured tissue, but the neurological response to injury and how the nervous system influences the healing process. And then he was using older versions of direct current, so like an analog device with a bunch of dials and stuff. And I was working with this guy, and my ligaments healed on their own, and I was able to avoid surgery, and I was relieved as an athlete, but as an engineering student, scientifically minded person, I was just so elated to find something that made sense scientifically from first principles. And so that sort of launched me on this journey, and there's many steps along the way to actually launching a product and things like that too. But that was sort of the initial catalyst.
I love how your life experience and things that you didn't plan for all came together at once and really set you on a different path that probably I'm sure didn't even plan on. So tell us how NeuFit works exactly.
So we're best known for the NEUBIE device, which is a device where you put electrodes on the skin and you send electrical currents. And so people see it and they sometimes think like, well, is that just a TENS unit, or why do we need anything else in this industry? Because there's so many of those already. And the answer is that there actually is a very unique difference between this and everything else that's out there. And it's that this uses direct current, whereas virtually everything else that's out there uses alternating current. And technology-wise, I really think it's as much of a difference as going from a horse-drawn carriage to a modern-day car. It's like, yes, they're both methods of transportation, so there's some overlap, but there's also a lot of differences, right? One is clearly more advanced; it allows you to do more than the other. So in terms of direct current, there's interesting history where a lot of these benefits that I'll mention momentarily were known, like in the 1960s, 1970s. But there was always a problem where it would sting and burn the skin when it was used at high enough levels. So it was a case of the baby being thrown out with the bathwater. Direct current fell out of favor, and now I think we're really leading the charge. Pun intended, I suppose, leading the charge to bring it back. So it has unique effects on the nervous system and on tissue healing, and helps people recovering from injuries, from surgeries, chronic pain, neurodegenerative conditions because of those unique effects.
I've seen maybe some of those things that you're talking about. Years and years ago, I danced, and I remember seeing a dancer having something electrical on her body because of something going on. And I'm just trying to understand, is that kind of where it's more natural healing, like you said, with your own experience, than maybe even than surgery?
Yeah, so it is under the same umbrella probably as what you saw, where it is, there's electrodes or like patches or pads on the skin. It's sending electricity. It's just a question of what is that signal being sent, and this one being more sophisticated, having more of these types of effects. And yeah, in terms of that, to that point, is a great point of more natural, certainly less invasive than
Mm,
surgery, far less in the way of side effects than drugs, even over the counter,
mm.
non-steroidal inflammatory, even better, even healthier than, popping Advils and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So one cool thing about it is that, it really, part of it is this process of what's called neuromuscular reeducation, resetting or turning back on the nervous system so that it can support healing and really influence all the body's own natural healing processes to work better, to work faster, et cetera.
Hmm. I kind of want to go back to what you said at the beginning, how, the two collided for you. Why was it important for you to even start this? Like you had the how it helped you, but why was it important for you to do this for other people? Because you could have just taken it and run.
So I after that experience I had in college,
Hmm.
actually I bought an older device and was experimenting with it in my dorm room and working with some teammates and stuff like that. And then I came down here to Austin for graduate school in engineering at UT. And
Hmm.
I thought like I was just sort of interested in that and it would maybe be a hobby or something, but that
Yeah.
yeah, I'd be a good engineer, have a career, and a more typical path. And while I was here, I kind of networked in the sports medicine world and I met the guy who was the chiropractor for the UT Longhorns football team.
Mm.
He also had a private practice here, Rollingwood, Westlake area, and I rented where we are now. So for people listening, just
Hmm.
a few minutes west of downtown Austin, and I rented 120 square feet from him and started working in sort of a practice within a practice, treating people with these older versions of electrical stimulation. And I just had this like voice inside this I would say a calling or just felt
Mm.
compelled to do this. So I thought, oh, I'll do this a little bit while I finish up grad school or things like that. And I just loved doing that work so much that I
Hmm.
decided that's what I want to do. So I ended up pivoting into doing neuroscience, also additional graduate work because I got more and more into this. And then
Hmm.
to some of your question about why just take it and run with it or something like that, there's sort of an interesting iteration where for many years I was, putting in the 10,000 hours actually working with people using this, older versions of technology. I kept seeing ways I wanted to improve it, technology,
Hmm.
methodology, but I was really thinking like for 8, 9 years, I was thinking I just want someone else to come out with something and I'll use that and I'll open more clinics around town. And then, eventually just got to the point where I decided I just feel like it's got to be me and I got to do this. And I decided,
Mm.
in the span of a few weeks, with all these different signs and circumstances, decided, all right, you know what? I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna try to take this on and create a product.
Wow. Wow. Well, you obviously just didn't create it one day. So what did that look like? Did it take you a long time? Was it something generally that came faster than you thought? Or tell us
It
about that.
sometimes, well, half jokingly say I'm glad I didn't know how long it was going to take and how expensive it was going to be because if I did, I don't know if I would have done it. But yeah, it was about a 2.5 year to almost 3 year
Mhm.
journey from early 2015 to late 2017. And so at the end of 2017, we finally got our first newbies, produced, created, available for sale, and started running our first certification courses. The first one at the end of 2017, and it was a long journey, through prototyping, finding a contract
Mhm.
manufacturer, getting through the FDA, having all these iterations along the way. It was way longer, way more expensive than I ever thought it was going to be. Um, and I'm just, found
Yeah.
some creative ways to do it, a little bit of, financing and help along the way. And I'm grateful that we were able to not get to the finish line, get to the starting line.
Yeah. I bet having to go through the FDA, that's a whole nother process in itself. So I can only imagine what that was like. So just to kind of set the stage for everyone listening who are also business owners, this is, a really in-depth company where you, like you said, FDA prototype, get a manufacturer. How did you even start that? Do you have a co-founder? Did you have a team to get started? Was it something you did on your own or maybe even investors?
So, on a combination really. So,
Hmm.
I had been running this clinic and living very modestly and really reinvesting all the profits from my clinic business in order to do
Yeah.
that, which helped some, but couldn't fund all of it. And then did some, friends and family convertible note financing to help get resources in there, and then did some creative financing with a contract manufacturer who allowed us to amortize some of our initial expenses over the first batches of units. So it was a combination of things, really literally like bootstrapping, right? And
Yeah.
so it was a combination of things there. And then in terms of the team, there were a couple really serendipitous happening, events along the way. Like when I had this clinic, I had a guy come in who owns a bunch of real estate around town. And one day he said, if you ever wanted to like make something like this, I have this amazing prototype engineering firm that's a tenant in one of my buildings. And I was like, huh, interesting. I filed that one away. I was like, I'm not looking to do that, but I did file it away in my mind. And then I had another one where I had a client who is a patent attorney come in and
Mm.
helped him, fairly significantly overcome an injury, and started sharing with him just in natural conversation some of
Mm-hmm.
my thoughts and ideas about how the technology could be improved. And he said, you probably could patent that. And then that was another one where I was like, huh, okay. So we're like these little
The stars are
breadcrumbs.
aligning and
Yeah,
telling you, pointing in all directions.
and these were all sort of happening around the same time, and I was still had been just thinking, yeah, I want to open up more clinics, but just a few of these different things just sort of shifted my perspective. And then I said, all right, I guess if I want it done, right, I'm going to have to do it myself.
Yeah. I love though that it seems like just confirmation came along the way of the how, like you were saying earlier. It just kept kind of getting compelled to start the business. I wonder what kind of injuries do you treat?
So it's really interesting, when we talk about like NeuFit, new for neurological,
Hmm.
it's in our name that
Okay, I was
we're
going to ask that.
we've got nervous system first, really lens through which we're looking at everything. So I think people naturally understand that, we're treating people to help them restore function after stroke or spinal cord injury or MS
Mhm.
or neuropathy or stuff like that that's in that neurological category. And I think one of the biggest breakthroughs that we're really sharing with the industry is how important it is to actually treat the nervous system, even for orthopedic injuries. So for an athlete who has a sprained ankle, or someone who just had a knee surgery or shoulder surgery,
Mhm.
a big part of the reason it takes so long to recover is because not as much the initial injury or trauma, but the neurological response to that injury or trauma, and how the nervous system shuts down muscles, how it shifts into more of a sympathetic fight or flight state instead of that rest and digest state where it can heal and repair and rebuild itself. And so, helping to turn muscles back on locally, helping to create these more global shifts of the nervous system so it can support healing, really
Wow.
profoundly help people even when they have orthopedic injuries that aren't considered quote unquote neurological injuries. So there's a lot of different use cases, and there's different clinics. Some clinics that specialize in athletes, some that specialize in
Okay.
neuropathy or MS patients, and there's kind of everything in between.
And when you say those clinics, like these clinics are using your product for their specialty. Is
Oh
that
yes, yes. Thank you for. Sorry, that was a little bit unclear. Yes.
that's okay.
So for everybody listening, if you were like, hey, I want to try this out, or I have
Yeah.
a relative in New England or someone in Southern California, we actually we sell our product to physical therapy and chiropractic clinics and
Okay.
professional sports teams and people like that. And so a big we do have one clinic here in Austin, and we also our my main focus day to day is on the device business. So, we have a listing on our website, for example, where there's a directory of,
I was going
several,
to ask that.
yeah, for, I think, I don't know, I guess I don't know if everyone's on there, but, should be around 400 clinics at this
Wow.
point, around the US. And then there's some other countries with distributors
Hmm.
coming online and stuff like that too. So yeah, that's been just so amazing, humbling, exciting,
Hmm.
gratifying, just so many things to see this work
Yeah.
grow from our little humble office in Austin, Texas, to see people doing it with
Mm.
high level athletes and entertainers and really super famous people, and
Really?
have people have and then people have clinics in rural Ohio where they're helping people with phantom limb pain, who had a limb cut off in a farming accident. I mean, it's just this amazing to see the breadth
Wow.
the breadth of what's happening.
Wow. Okay, I have two questions based on that. One, speaking of, I'll ask this first to kind of stay in the same vein of questioning. Um, but when you think about the different clinics, like even you said rural area, is it has it been easy for people to adapt this kind of therapy, or has it been like kind of having to really kind of convince like this is necessary layer of healing?
That's a great question. So many of you listening, you might be familiar with the concept of crossing the chasm, of how anytime you have sort of or diffusion of innovations theory, anytime you have something that's, innovative, something that's kind of new in the
Mm-hmm.
field, there is this sort of pattern where there's these sort of, innovators and early adopters
Mm-hmm.
who are willing to try things just based on, for some reason, it resonates with them. They see something, they feel something. And then there's sort of the early majority that need to see some evidence, but are kind of quicker to adopt. And then there's
Mm-hmm.
like the majority, the late majority, where it needs to be the standard of care, needs to have dozens or
Mm-hmm.
hundreds of research articles behind it and stuff like that. And so, in terms of, you know, persuading people to try a new technology or a new approach,
Yeah.
I think, we're in that sort of early adopter innovator stage. And then we
Mm-hmm.
also have, we have a full-time PhD neuroscientist that runs our research program. So
Oh
we have
wow.
several published articles. And I think those published articles are helping gain the interest of, the
Mm-hmm.
rest of that group, the people that just need to see more of that before they'd ever be willing to even
Mm-hmm.
entertain a conversation around it.
Yeah. I was gonna ask earlier when you started talking about all the clinics, understanding, knowing that you have over 400 clinics, that's people that believe in it. When did you know? Was there a moment where you're like, this is catching on? People are getting it.
You know, like you mentioned, it's sort of, different signs along the way feel validating or
Mm-hmm.
feel like confirmation. I've had several of those moments. Of course, there's ups and downs.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone listening has had in their own entrepreneurial journey. And, you know, especially when there's a few downs in a row, when you see one of these, like for me, there were a few certification courses that I hosted and taught where I had physical therapists who were practicing for 20 or 30 years saying like, oh my gosh, I've never done anything like this with a patient before. Wow, this is going to change the way I practice, moments like that
Wow.
where, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and then just, seeing some of these profound, dramatic, seeing a couple people get out of wheelchairs, regain their
Mm-hmm.
autonomy, which,
Oh,
is in fairness is something that happened over time,
sure.
a long time of consistent treatment. But seeing some of these, and then I just, I sort of had this feeling from the beginning that, I talked about having that calling inside of me, just having this feeling that, if I can just figure out the right way to share this with enough
Mm-hmm.
people, I just know inside, even
Mm.
I can't necessarily find the words. So I just have this inner knowing that, it's gonna somehow succeed.
Yeah, it's going to work, and that you're helping so many people,
Mhm.
seeing those patients, not just the clinics and the doctors buy into it, but seeing the testimonies, I'm sure, is something totally different. And
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
how,
amazing, really wonderful.
yeah. Do you remember one of the first ones you heard about that was outside of your own kind of realm? Maybe another clinic told you about a testimony?
Yeah, I mean, so, the first physical therapist to get one is a physical therapy practice owner in Tampa. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember a few months in having a call with him, and he was like, one, my junior therapist now, before everyone was coming in requesting him, and he was like, wow, people are actually finally coming in and wanting to work with my new younger staff therapist, which is awesome. And he told me, he's like, we're still treating athletes, getting even better
Mm-hmm.
results now, which is awesome. But now I've become like a neuro clinic. And I had a guy with a stroke who just in the first 6 weeks was able to open his hand for the first time in 2 or 3
Wow.
years. And, it was sort of a interesting, I've had
Yeah.
a lot of conversations like that just each one of those is like, okay, this is the reason we're doing it, right? Each one
Yeah.
sort of fills up that cup a little bit.
Yeah. I think that's amazing because sometimes, even I'm sure for our listeners, you have this passion to start a business and it fuels you so much. But then when you start seeing the results of how it's making impact in other places, it just makes it all the more worthwhile. Yeah. So how do you get the word out? Let's, just kind of like a marketing strategy, if you will. How do you let others know about you, whether it's locally here that they can come in or, other physicians?
So our best channels overall for the device business, best channels have probably been, I'd say influencers, people who are either coaching others or training others on certain aspects of the physical therapy industry, who have, practice owners they're already working with who know, like, and
Hmm.
trust them. And that was sort of the best way for, how we got started. We're doing social media advertising. We go to quite a few trade shows because the
Hmm.
product is very, the experience is really valuable, even far more than just talking about it. So when people get to experience it, and that's a good segue into kind of what we do for the clinic here too. The more we can go out and do demos at various wellness fairs, partner with other businesses where they're hosting something or
Hmm.
different things like that. If we can be out and actually share, experiences of the product and the method, that really lands with people, because I can't tell you how many at this point, thousands of times we've been at a booth with somebody, and in 5 or 10 minutes, we map around and find where their nervous system is shutting down muscles or something like that. And someone will
Hmm.
have a shoulder injury where they can't lift their arm up here, and all of a sudden it's overhead, or all of a sudden they're like, I just touched
Wow.
my toes for the first time in 2 years or 5 years, 20 years.
Like right there in the booth, right there, you'll do it. And you've seen that happen.
I mean, like hundreds or thousands of times. And then if, at
Wow.
these multi-day events, people will come back the next day and be like, dang, I still feel good. Like that was amazing. So it's the experience, I don't want to oversell it, for, it's not everybody is a home run
Sure.
every single first session, but we have seen 91 to 92% of people
Mm.
notice functional improvements and or reductions in pain in their first session. So it usually does at least lead to some improvement out of the gate.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so hopeful, I bet, for a lot of people even listening right now, that either they know someone or are that person that probably has been looking for this solution. So I think that's really cool.
Mhm.
Um, when you even think about all the demos, and this is the demos or, influence and social media, where do you think, for marketing at least, what is the percentage of marketing do you feel like is important to spend on your business?
Market, I mean, our target is about, reinvesting about 10% of revenue into the business
Hmm.
across all channels. So for us, that's events, paid advertising, and then, people who create copy, run ads, do
Hmm.
our stuff. So, I think that's sort of our, you know, target, and we're, plus or minus a
Yeah.
percent or two, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, I think every business is so different because it can look different, but for you, it's the in person that seems like it's the most beneficial.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know this is still maybe a new company and you have big vision and big plans for it. You're already been super successful. You've seen the results. So when you think of NeuFit and even your life down the road, maybe 3 to 5 years, where do you see NeuFit being?
It's an interesting question, and I think everyone listening to this, if you own a business, you probably have your own version of Mount Everest, like your BHAG. And so,
Uh-huh.
for us, it's getting certain numbers of these devices out into the world and knowing the millions and millions of people that would affect and impact. And so for us, I really liken our journey to a journey up a mountain. We may be 10 or
Mm.
20% of the way up that mountain. So we can look back and say, gosh, look at the view. Look how far we've come. We have a lot to be proud of. And then at the same moment in time, or the next moment in time, we can look up and say, and look how far we have to go. Right. So I think, I do, have that, really attempt to cultivate and reinforce that mindset of like both being grateful for what I have and aspirations for where I want to go at the same time.
Hmm.
Um, and then, I'm really excited about the journey that we're on. We've implemented in the last couple of years traction, EOS system,
Hmm.
many people, entrepreneurial operating system. The book is,
Okay.
which, some business owners listening to this might do. I actually have a copy of it. I happen to have a copy of it right here, but so
Traction. Yes.
track. Yeah. So if you're watching, of course you can see it. If you're just listening, you can't see it. But
Tell
so
us
we've
the name of the
implemented
book so everybody can remember it. Traction by who?
traction by Gino Wickman.
Gino Wickman. And he's the one that talks about the EOS. the entrepreneurial.
Yeah, he teaches about, created and teaches EOS. And so I'm really excited about this in terms of how how I see our business looking in the next 3 to 5 years. In the last two, we've really been able to build a leadership team where
Mm,
I feel like I can trust the people who own sales and operations and research and clinical affairs and those sorts of things, to where I can focus more on doing stuff like this, creating content, really cultivating strategic relationships that are important to me and to NeuFit.
mm-hmm.
Do things like that, where so I definitely see us continuing to grow. We made the Inc. 5000 the last 3 years. I'd like to see us continue growing.
Wow.
Um,
Congratulations.
well, thank you. So I'd like to see us certainly continue that growth rate, and also see, really, I'm focused a lot more, at least right now. It varies, internal versus external focus.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, internally, in terms of setting up the roles and structures. And I think as business owners, there's another book called, I think it's Who, Not How, that speaks
Mm,
to this notion of, if I'm leading a business, it's not my job to figure out the how we're going to solve this, how we're going to do that, how we're going to,
yeah.
it's my job to find the right who, find the person who then either comes preloaded with the skills and
Mm,
can create the how, find the path forward for that. So I'm sort of enjoying that mode, and definitely would like to be even more in that place 3 to 5 years from now. So certainly
yeah.
continue in sales. I think there's a few things, a few improvements and versions of the product and things I'd like to have,
Mm-hmm.
in that time, and also really continue just building a really good company that operates well, where, it's
Mm-hmm.
just a great environment. Because, I'm not one of these guys that wants to just exit and be a serial entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
I love this. And so
Mm-hmm.
I want to make it something that I continue to enjoy day to day, and that everyone on the team continues to enjoy day to day too.
Yeah. I love that you said the who, not the how. And you talked a little bit about your team. And I think that I kind of want to just stop right there for a minute and talk about team, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs do feel that pressure sometimes to, you know, get it all done. Um, how has the team helped you? And why is it important, do you think, to have a team to help you grow?
Oh gosh, there's that saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far,
Hmm.
go together, right? Or teamwork makes the dream work. I just imagine, even if I were the best salesperson in the world, which I
Mm,
assure you I'm not, but even if I was, how good could I be at sales if I also have to pack and ship units, if I also
mm,
have to look at our financial reports every month, if I also have to, look at regulatory filings with the FDA, right? I wouldn't be,
hmm.
just wouldn't have the time and energy and mind space to devote to that. And so I think it is so important to be able to get people in the right role and allow them to
Mm,
just really sink their teeth in and thrive. And there's people who are doing far better than I would in any of these verticals, because they're, in part because they're probably better at it than I am, and in part because they're just simply able to focus on that area. So they can
hmm.
see things that I wouldn't see, because they spend more time with the problems. They feel the pains that inspire them to make
Mm,
improvements. They get to learn through repetition. A lot of it, if you're having sales calls or learning any procedure or something, the volume, the repetitions, you get
yeah,
better as you go, and you learn how to improve and iterate and all those things. And if you're,
yeah,
you only really get those compounding benefits if you're really doing it consistently for a while, and, in a focused manner.
yeah. What kind of leadership, or what kind of leader do you think you are? How would you
Um,
describe your leadership style?
I don't know that I necessarily have a good word or words for it, but there's a few things that come to mind. I mean, one is, I, you know, I guess transparently, the things I can work on are, historically I've had difficulty having uncomfortable conversations, setting boundaries, giving feedback, kind of more people pleasing tendencies. So there's,
Mm,
certainly a growth edge there. I think,
hmm.
business is a great avenue for personal growth, dare I say, even spiritual growth and development. See, I
Hmm.
really believe that. So, a few things, one thing that's helped me in that way, actually, which will kind of be a segue into this, what type of leader I am question. I read, I can't remember the book. I think it was something by, is it Peter or Patrick Lencioni? I think it was
Oh, yeah.
one
The
of his,
Working Genius?
it was a different one. I have that on my shelf. I
Okay.
haven't read that one yet, but one of his other books, he talked about I think it was a CEO of Ford or something like that who
Hmm.
came in and had to turn around the organization. And he did it with this concept that he called joyful accountability. And
Mm,
he basically said, look, I'm here to hold you accountable to hitting these metrics. And I'm not going to get mad at you if you don't. You're not going to work here anymore because the mission is more important than any one individual person. But it's nothing personal. If we can't do it, so be it. He kind of took this attitude there,
mm,
and that really helped
wow.
me. That helped me a lot be able to hold people accountable
Hmm.
because it's not personal. It's just, we're just, me holding you accountable.
Mm,
It's not, it's like the pain of having an uncomfortable conversation with one person or the pain of letting down the 20 to 30 other
mm,
people on my team, right? That sort of outweighs it. So all these
wow.
different things have helped me there. I think I've, I've I've learned, through leadership coaching to do a better job of listening and communicating with the people on my listening to and communicating with the people on my
Mm,
team, especially when it comes to making decisions and things like that. So I think,
mm,
fairly collaborative and,
yeah.
um, I've really enjoyed this EOS that I mentioned earlier, in part
Hmm.
because the system, once implemented, sort of creates its own momentum and accountability structure, and
Mm,
it almost helps the business. I mean, I'll say run itself might be an exaggeration, but get some positive momentum. So it doesn't require,
sure.
it just needs sort of guardrails instead of you pushing it all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I love Patrick Lencioni. I listen to his podcast and the Working Genius. So I think just even like you said that, and I think we were talking about this before we hit record, always growing, always learning, um, and having that posture even as a leader is so important. So I think it's good.
Yeah.
Um, okay, I just want to go into some rapid fire questions because I could really talk to you all day about this. I have so many more questions, but uh, I love the rapid fire. So let's just go there really quick. Are you ready?
I'm going to buckle my seatbelt, Heather.
Okay, let's do it. Okay. What do you think is the key to success for you?
Ooh, delayed gratification, passion, consistency, that sort of, if you can combine
Hmm.
those terms, whatever comes out at the end.
Hmm. I'm writing that down. I've heard delayed gratification before. That's really good. So you're not making impulse decisions. Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah, and understanding that, my efforts now, I may not get rewarded for 3, 6, 12 months or longer. But the effort is still worth it,
Hmm.
in part for its own sake, and in part because I know it's setting us up, for the future.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to other business owners?
I would say implement some sort of system like EOS if you aren't already, which we talked about, but some sort of clear operating system for the business. So everyone's speaking the same language in terms of strategic planning, knowing the direction of where they're going, clarity on
Hmm.
roles and who's doing what. And that has been, the one that we've really benefited from.
Yeah, it's good. Okay. I know we've already talked about a couple of books, but what is maybe the book or podcast that you're currently listening to that you would recommend?
Ooh, I
Your podcast for sure, right?
that's
NeuFit
right.
podcast.
That's right. I gotta
Don't
gotta
forget that.
plug the NeuFit Undercurrent podcast on, Spotify, Apple, all those
Awesome.
places. But I finished rereading recently a book called The Culture Code,
Hmm.
and I love that one. So for any of you business owners listening to this, that's another one I highly recommend, The Culture Code, and it's about, looking at the commonalities among great cultures in successful sports teams, businesses, Navy SEAL team operators, a comedy troupe, and these sort of common threads that really lead to great culture. I mean, I could do a whole episode on that book, but I'll just sprinkle that out there as a
Yeah,
recommendation.
I've heard someone else mentioned that book to me this week, and so usually when I hear someone say a book two or three times, I know it's one that I need to get. So that's good. Okay, this is kind of a kind of a fun one. If you had a little bit of magic dust and you could sprinkle it in one place in your business, where would it be?
Um, I would clone our VP of sales so that, she could both make more sales and, lead the team, right? Because there's always that tension of like individual contributor versus leadership
Hmm.
responsibilities. So yeah, I would
Yeah,
clone her.
that's really good. What would you want more of? If you could clone her, what would you want more of?
Um, you know, keep the real her doing the leadership, and then, you know, have
Mhm.
the cloned version go back and do some more sales calls and things like that. Go to events and do sort of the blocking and
Yeah,
tackling the sales activity.
yeah. So it sounds like that might be a goal that you have, huh?
That's right. Yes, that's right.
Yeah. All right. Before we get to the last question of the day, tell everybody where they can find you, follow you, and even listen to your podcast.
Yes, if anyone's interested in learning more, our main URL is www.neu.fit, neu.fit. And we also have a website for our clinic and gym here in Austin, neufitATX.com. On Instagram, you can see I actually just started a personal page earlier this year, 2024, for the first time.
Oh,
Our main page is NeuFit RFP for rehab, fitness, and performance, and I just started a personal one. So I've enjoyed putting some content out there, interacting with people, and it's just Garrett.Salpeter, my first and last name, but most active on Instagram. I got the website, and then yeah, the podcast NeuFit Undercurrent, and then I have a book called the NeuFit Method. I'll grab a copy of it to show you.
oh
Right here.
yeah.
So available on Amazon. So it's called the NeuFit Method. If you're listening, you don't see it, but if you're watching, you see me holding it up there.
I love it. It's green, looks like with a heartbeat on it. Was the book the inspiration to you getting a personal Instagram?
I finally released the book in 2021 after several years off and on
Mhm.
and working on it, and then finally did the Instagram in 2024. So maybe I'm just late to the party. I don't know, but
Maybe so. Well, we're glad you're on. Okay. All right. Final question of the day. What is most inspiring you today?
you know, I had to have an uncomfortable conversation along these lines of joyful accountability. So it
Mhm.
actually is sort of great opportunity to reflect on this, but this notion I mentioned earlier of seeing my business journey not just as, you know, a way to succeed or validate myself or earn money, but seeing it
Mhm.
as a true path to personal and, I would say, spiritual growth. You
Mm.
know, learning so much about myself and human nature going on this journey, and
Mm.
I think that sort of been reminding myself of that, and that's why I, you know, do intend to continue doing this for, you know,
Mhm.
certainly the foreseeable future.
Well, it sounds like your joyful accountability moment you had with this person turned out well.
That's right, it did. It did very well.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
Good- Things can go well even when we have to confront.
that's right. That's right. Well,
Yeah,
they say
that's good.
I heard a great quote, something like the difference between the person we are today and person we will be 5 years from now is the number of uncomfortable conversations we have.
Mm, that's that's another podcast for sure.
That's
You
right.
should
Yeah,
have that on your show for sure.
that's right. Yeah.
It's a good topic. Well, I could just have this conversation all day long because I love conversations like this when I talk to business owners who are really passionate about their business. So thank you for just sharing your story. And the next time I'm in the area, I'm going to drive by and see where you guys are in the Austin area. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank
Um,
you, Heather. Thanks everybody for tuning in as well.
for sure. And I just want to encourage everybody that's watching to save this show and come back and watch it because there really were some great nuggets in this show. And so it's a show that you need to listen to again. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel so that you can get a notification every time a new conversation drops, just like this one. Thanks to everyone who joined us today, and a special thank you to you, Garrett. Again, I appreciate it. It was so great to meet you.
You too. Thank you, Heather.
Bye.